Rain drummed softly against the metal roof of the Ireland Talent Arena as Jomar Reyes stepped onto the stage, trying to hide the tremor in his hands. The lights were brighter than anything he had ever seen, brighter than the sun that scorched the streets of Cebu where he grew up selling boiled corn with his mother. His jacket, borrowed from a roommate, hung loosely on his shoulders, and his shoes, already showing thin patches and tiny holes near the toes, scraped the floor as he walked to the center. The mic stood taller than him, and for a second he wondered if he even belonged here, a poor Cebuano cleaner in a foreign land filled with voices richer and stronger than his own. Simon Cowell stared at him with that familiar expression people either feared or admired. Eyebrows slightly raised. Lips pressed. "Name?" he asked, short and sharp. Jomar swallowed, hearing his own heartbeat. "Jomar. Jomar Reyes P. From Cebu City," he said, his voice small but steady. There were murmurs from the crowd. His English carried the soft, melodic accent of home, and some audience members leaned forward, curious. But others looked uncertain. His clothes, his thin frame, his nervous shaking, none of it screamed star material. The backing track crackled to life. Jomar closed his eyes, trying to block out the sea of faces in front of him. All he imagined was the sound of his mother's voice in their tiny Cebu home, humming Elvis songs while washing clothes by hand. He took a breath. Then he began. The first note surprised even him. His voice dropped warm and deep, rich with the unmistakable resonance of classic Elvis Presley. The arena reacted instantly. Some gasped, others straightened in their seats, wondering if the timid boy from Cebu had somehow hidden a legend inside him. Simon's eyes widened. He leaned forward, elbows on the judge's desk, staring as though trying to confirm he was truly hearing what he thought he was hearing. His usual guarded expression loosened into something close to disbelief. Jomar kept singing, each line stronger than the last. The tremble in his hands disappeared, replaced by a confidence he never knew he was allowed to have. His voice echoed across the hall, carrying memories of late nights singing in his tiny Ireland apartment after long shifts mopping bar floors. This was him, this was everything he had kept buried for years. By the time he reached the chorus, the audience was on its feet. Some clapped to the beat, others simply stared in wonder. A woman near the front wiped her eyes. Amanda covered her mouth in shock. Alicia let out a soft, whispered "wow." And Simon, famous for his brutal honesty, slowly removed his glasses, eyes fixed on Jomar like he had just discovered a miracle. "Wait. What?" he muttered under his breath, audible enough for the camera but too soft for Jomar to hear. As the final note rang through the hall, the room fell completely silent for half a heartbeat. Then the arena erupted into applause, loud, overwhelming, roaring applause that shook Jomar's chest. He stood frozen, breath trembling, unsure if he was dreaming. Simon whispered to himself, barely audible over the noise, "Where has this kid been hiding?" The applause was still fading when Jomar lowered the microphone, his chest rising and falling as he tried to catch his breath. The spotlights made his eyes shine, but not enough to hide the trembling in them. He wasn't used to being looked at like this, like he mattered, like people saw him. For a moment he stood frozen, unsure what to do with his hands, unsure if he should bow, smile, or simply disappear back into the shadows he came from. Simon leaned toward the panel microphone. His voice softened, losing its usual edge. "Jomar, why are you emotional?" The question hit him harder than he expected. Jomar swallowed, staring down at his worn shoes. All the feelings he had kept locked away for years crept up his throat. He fidgeted with the fraying seam on his sleeve, searching for words that wouldn't embarrass him. But nothing safe came. Only the truth. My mother, he began quietly, his accent thicker now. She's still in Cebu. I send money every week. I wanted to show her I'm worth something. The arena went still. The kind of silence that feels heavy, like it's listening carefully. He took a slow breath, voice cracking as he continued, "When I came to Ireland, I thought things would be better right away. But it's been hard, Pa. Very hard. I work nights cleaning pubs and sometimes in the morning too. Some days I sleep only 3 hours before going again." He wiped the corner of his eye quickly, hoping no one noticed. "But singing reminds me of home. It's the one thing that keeps me going." Alicia's face softened instantly, her eyes glossy. Amanda pressed her fingertips to her lips, her expression filled with concern. Even the audience, noisy moments ago, now watched with aching sympathy. People in the crowd exchanged glances, some touched, some emotional themselves. Jomar tried to smile. It came out small and tired. "My mama used to say my voice was a blessing. I just wanted to prove she's right, even if I'm far away." Simon sat back in his chair. He blinked slowly, his jaw tightening like he was fighting something inside himself. He usually kept a barrier, a distance between him and these emotional stories. But something about the young man on stage, a boy who had nothing except an old pair of shoes, a cracked voice, and a mother's hope, cut through him. When Simon finally spoke, his voice was lower than before, almost unsteady. "Jomar," he paused, taking a breath. "Your mother would be proud of you. Truly." Jomar's lips parted, and a tear he couldn't hold back rolled down his cheek. Simon continued, "That performance wasn't good. It wasn't even great. It was extraordinary. You touched everyone in this room." The audience erupted into applause again, this time softer, more emotional, a wave of warmth rather than excitement. Some people stood to clap. Others simply nodded with respect. Jomar bowed his head, overwhelmed by kindness he never expected to receive on a stage so far from home. He whispered, barely audible, "Salamat pa, thank you so much," before wiping another tear. And for the first time in a long time, maybe since he left Cebu, he felt seen. He felt believed in. He felt like his mother's dream for him was finally finding its light. The judges leaned into one another, whispering urgently, their faces a mix of shock, admiration, and something deeper, something emotional. The crowd buzzed with anticipation, sensing that whatever was about to happen wasn't just routine. Jomar stood under the fierce gold lights, still trying to steady his breathing. His hands trembled at his sides, not from nerves anymore, but from the sheer intensity of everything that had happened in the last few minutes. He looked out into the ocean of faces, strangers who were cheering for him like he was someone important. It felt unreal, like he had stepped into someone else's dream. Simon looked at Amanda, then at Alicia, and finally back at the stage, his eyes fixed on Jomar as if studying every detail of the young man's face, the exhaustion, the hope, the quiet fire that had been buried under years of hard work. Then Simon stood up. The audience gasped at the sudden movement. He didn't speak immediately. He simply walked forward, placing both hands on the judge's desk as if grounding himself for what he was about to say. "This," Simon began, his voice carrying through the arena with an intensity that made even the backstage crew stop what they were doing, is not just an audition." The room fell silent. "This," he said again, eyes still locked on Jomar, "is the beginning of a superstar." Jomar's breath caught in his throat. He didn't dare move. He didn't even blink. Then Simon lifted his hand and slammed it onto the golden buzzer with a force that echoed through the arena like a heartbeat. Everything exploded at once. A burst of golden confetti shot upward and rained down over the stage. The audience erupted into screams and cheers, some jumping to their feet, others covering their mouths in disbelief. Jomar's knees buckled. He fell forward, landing on them as his hands covered his face. He wasn't just crying, he was breaking open, years of struggle and sacrifice pouring out of him in sobs. The confetti fell over his hair, his shoulders, his borrowed jacket. It glittered on the stage like tiny fragments of miracle. Simon did something he rarely did, he left the judges' table. He walked up the steps and onto the stage, the crowd roaring even louder as he approached the young Filipino singer. Simon placed a gentle hand on Jomar's shoulder. The camera zoomed in, capturing a moment that felt almost unreal. Simon Cowell comforting a trembling, crying contestant like a proud mentor, like someone who believed deeply in the dream standing before him. "You came here with nothing," Simon said softly, close enough that only Jomar and those near the front could truly hear. "But your voice, your heart, that's everything." Jomar looked up, tears mixed with gold dust on his cheeks. The light sparkled in his eyes. The audience began chanting, louder and louder until the whole arena shook with their voices. "Filipino Elvis! Filipino Elvis! Filipino Elvis!" Amanda wiped tears from her face. Alicia clapped with a hand pressed to her chest, moved beyond words. Even the cameramen seemed emotional, their hands trembling slightly as they filmed. Jomar rose slowly, overwhelmed, shaking, but smiling like the world had finally opened its doors for him. And for the first time since he left Cebu, he felt the weight of his mother's prayers lifting him high, all the way to the golden, glowing stage where his new life was beginning.